It's a tough day.
It's a tough day.
It's a tough day, man.
I was just going to say, you heard Heather's on the top of the news there. She mentioned Bob Rivers, who sadly passed away. You came in and told us that news this morning when you were coming in. And, it is very,
First
very
the Cheesecake
sad
Factory downtown, and now this.
Boy.
I mean, I don't know how much more, Gino. No, you joke and you laugh so you don't cry.
So, yeah, I mean, and that's what you guys did for years. You were partners with this guy for, 25 years? Is that right?
Well, yeah, on air together for 25 years. We continued to make music together and do podcasts together throughout Bob's retirement, which was all too brief. But Bob succumbed to his long fight with cancer. He was given a 6-month diagnosis 3 years ago.
Wow.
And literally squeezed every drop of juice out of life that could be possible.
Amazing.
Yeah, an amazing man, amazing friend.
It's such a small community. I mean, I know that all the different stations and everybody's competing.
He got fired from every station in the New England area before I met him.
Sign you're doing something right, I guess.
You're failing up. Yeah.
Well, he was tremendously successful here in Seattle, and I grew up hearing about him, and it's funny because I didn't really know a lot about him or you until I married into my wife's family, whose father, my father-in-law, him, rest in peace, my father-in-law, but he was a huge Bob Rivers fan and Spike O'Neill fan.
That's awful sweet.
And so I used to hear all these stories about all this crazy stuff that you guys used to get up to. And then when you and I started working together, it's just one of those things where you spent so much time with this guy. You were kind of joking before the show. You probably spent more time with him than you have your wife.
No, we did a minute-by-minute count. But Melissa and I did.
Really?
Yeah, because, I mean, when you do the kind of radio that we are fortunate to do here, with Bob, was the same type of his show. It's a family. Mm-hmm. And you spend 5 days a week for 25 years, from 4 a.m. till noon was
in a small room
in
together.
a small room, laughing, crying, fighting. I couldn't tell you how many times I ducked because a coffee cup was coming flying at my head in the middle of the show.
Nice.
Too many times to remember. But a man who just was gracious and brilliant and generous with the mic. It was funny. My first week on air, my nickname became Mike Happy, because I would not shut up. And he's like, the beauty is in the pause of conversation. Bob taught us that we're having a conversation. You and Laura and I have this conversation, but we're having a conversation with the entirety of the Northwest. Mm-hmm. People are listening to what we say, and they're thinking about what we say, and they're forming opinions about what we say, and they yell at the radio, or they interact, or they agree, they shake their head sideways, whatever it is. But those moments where we take a breath lets the audience react and engage and take part. It's an interactive conversation with the audience that we have at home. And Bob always got that. And no matter who he brought onto the show, at one point we had like 7 people on the show, 8 people on the show at the height. Whether it was the radio show or the band, where one night we had 15 people on stage, including a harpist, 3 horn players, 3 back. I mean, it was 2 percussions, but it was Bob always realized that everyone has something worthwhile to contribute to every conversation.
Sure. No
matter who you were on the station, if you were the front desk girl, the phone screener, had an opinion about something that was no less valid than anybody else that had a microphone. And they all got an opportunity to move the conversation forward and to raise the level of discourse.
Can you tell me just for a second?
Is
it okay if I just ask you some questions about it?
It's the only thing keeping me from crying is talking. So by all means, ask away.
The music that you guys also got to do together. Because not only did you do the radio together, you guys also decided, well, we're spending all of our days working together. Why don't we also spend our evenings
and weekends
together?
I mean,
really like a family.
That.
So, how did that all start? Were you guys all musical? And you guys originally came from Baltimore, is that right?
Well, Bob grew up in the New England area. And Bob got his start in local radio in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. And when I say he was fired from every station in New England, I'm not kidding. Why
was he fired? But he did so well here in town.
Well, because he was finding his way, trial and error. You learn things that work and don't work. He got fired one morning from, I don't know. I could tell you 1,000 stories, but why he lost jobs. When he got to New England, he really and worked in Worcester, Mass, which is a suburb of Boston, and he got this little station AAF in Worcester, Mass, to be AAF, and he got them to #1 in Boston, unheard of. It'd be like somebody from Bremerton getting a radio show and winning Seattle.
Just beating everybody.
Yeah. And one of the things that Bob broke through with was the Twisted Tunes. And he got a record deal with Atlantic Records, made his first Twisted Christmas album.
Really?
And that's when I met him. And when I met him, he came to Baltimore and was making these twisted tunes, which I hated. When Bob came onto my hometown radio station.
Why'd you hate him?
Because he was ruining the music I loved. And to this day, I can't hear any song I love without hearing the twisted tune that we bastardized it with. Right? God, this guy's a clown. And then
So how did you two meet up?
I was a complaint caller to his show.
Literally, you were calling in a complaint?
I was literally not about the tunes. He made a parody of Monday Monday by the Mamas and Papas about Hyundai. Can't trust that car, right?
It's actually now a very good vehicle.
It's a very good vehicle.
They took that criticism well.
My dad ran car dealerships, and I was selling Hyundais.
Oh, you were selling Hyundais,
and we were a major advertiser on the station. And I called. Dude, this is hard enough without you telling people they're death traps. Can you knock it off? Bob's manager made him come to our car dealership and apologize and take me on a test drive.
Oh, this is like a sales opportunity.
Yes. Well, we're the biggest advertiser on the station.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And Bob met me. He goes, "You got a real knack for this. You should. If you ever want to try radio, come in." And he invited me as an intern. And 2 weeks after I became an intern, he's like, "We're leaving town. Do you want to go?"
Really?
Yeah. And I moved to Seattle with 2 weeks radio experience and no training.
So you make a complete career change.
Complete life change.
How old were you at the time?
26. Perfect time to get out of Baltimore.
It is a good time. 26 is a great. 26 is a great time to actually like go and explore new things because it's right before you're going to meet that person that you're probably going to settle down with, which then does limit your ability to move around. You got to start a family and stuff like that.
Absolutely. It's time to cut the ties.
So you leave Baltimore, you follow Bob.
Yep.
What was it about him that you decided, I'm going to take a chance on this guy?
I was working for my dad's car dealerships. He had 7 dealerships, and I was tending bar at night, and I was literally burning the candle at both ends. And I was just tired and fatigued, and wasn't. And I tell you what, my dad, who I worked for, my dad who ran these dealerships, came and saw me at a bar one night singing after working all day at the car dealership, and he called me at like 2 a.m. and said, "Look, you obviously aren't doing what you love at the car dealership. It's okay to quit the family business." And Bob had offered this moment. He's like, "Come do this."
What a gift.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it was a gift. If it weren't for Bob Rivers, I wouldn't have met my wife, wouldn't have started my family, wouldn't have the life I have.
Isn't that amazing?
And so many people that when we did the show, Bob, people would listen in, and the greatest compliment you can get from an audience is, "Man, you feel like you're family to me. I lived your life with you," because we lived our lives on the air, very authentic and transparent. You know, when I got cancer diagnosis, when my wife had her heart issues, when our youngest was born, the whole city, we shared with the whole city. And we didn't think we were taking advantage of our lives, but we were sharing. We had a relationship with our audience.
Sure.
You talked about the music that we made, the Twisted Tunes, which was Bob's really calling card, and internationally renowned.
It's what set him apart, it sounds like, yeah.
Bob was, it's no secret, he'll tell anybody, he was an addict and alcoholic, a recovering addict and alcoholic. And he tackled everything he did with the same demented pursuit of addiction, whether it was radio or songs. Bob took it upon himself to make sure when we made a song parody, wasn't just clever or funny. It had to sound exactly like the original. He would like figure out what kind of guitar it was recorded on, what kind of microphone it was sang into.
He'd replicate all that.
Yes, everything to
that's
note
perfect.
for note for note. So when I'm sitting in the studio with Bob in the first week I was there.
Can we get a few of those, Andrew? Can we get a few of those and we'll play them a little bit later? Yeah.
So
it's Nick. It's not Andrew.
It's okay. He does it so well.
I'm like trifecta, Andrew,
thank you very
John,
much.
and Nick, whatever.
The first week I was with Bob, somebody called into the station, and Lucille Ball was passing away. She was in the hospital, and someone said, "You should do a song about Lucille Ball." Right, and I sat in the studio in the back of the room while they were doing their morning show, and I wrote my first song parody. And I handed it to Bob, and he's like, "Who wrote this?" I'm like, "I wrote this." He's like, "You just wrote this?"
About Lucille Ball passing away?
We did Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I wrote Lucy's in the hospital dying. I wrote it in the room, and he's like, "Take this to the studio. Here's the CD of the Beatles.
Yeah,
we're going to start the track today. We're recording this today.
We're going to Abbey Road.
We're doing it today,
right now."
And we got the song on the air the next day.
Really?
And there were literally thousands of complaint calls.
Of course.
They wanted to run us out of town on a rail.
Now, was this back in Baltimore?
Baltimore, 98 Rock.
Okay,
98
so
Rock
this is before you guys get to Seattle.
This before he even said, that's when he said, we're leaving. I'm at the end of a 2-year contract. The negotiations aren't going well. We're probably going to leave town. You're coming with us.
And he's like the hot ticket at the time because he's like taken to nothing and brought it up to number one.
He put Baltimore. He took Worcester to number 1. He took Baltimore to number 1. We moved to KISW.
What year was that?
89.
89. So you guys come to Seattle in 89, which is just about to experience like this giant grunge thing.
Yeah,
it's like
grunge.
perfect timing.
Oh my gosh.
You guys are in rock radio.
We were the KSW morning show during grunge.
Isn't it funny how timing just works out sometimes? It looks back. I don't remember who it was, but
I had Eddie Vedder in my 66 Beetle driving him from a softball game back to the station to do an interview.
Kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Just because he was a nothing.
These were guys who played at the bars in town.
Yeah. Is it? I think Joe Walsh, right, from the
Eagles?
The Eagles.
Yeah.
I heard an interview with him. I think it was actually in that Beatles documentary, or Eagles documentary you and I were talking about, History of the Eagles. But he was talking about how his life was so crazy and random and everything. But when he looks back at it, it feels like a novel. Like everything is planned out.
Yeah, everything happened for a reason.
And it must feel like that for you. Like
really
89,
does.
you guys come out here, you take this big swing and this big change. You follow Bob, which must have felt at the time. In retrospect, it makes sense, but at the time, it must have felt a little bit like, well, I'm running away to join the circus.
That's exactly how it felt. And my plan was to spend 2 years in Seattle, learning how to do radio, and then move back to my hometown. I'm such a Baltimorean, through and through.
Yeah.
I was going to, learn how to do radio and move back and be the mayor of my hometown. I'm a Balmer guy. But then I met my wife.
There it is.
And the hook was set. Man.
Yeah.
And this is where I can't imagine any other life, any place else in the world than right here, because of my dear friend Bob.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
What a testament too, because you guys have stayed friends even after he retired in 2014. You guys stayed friends. You guys. I know that
he air checked our show last week. He called me.
Did he really?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And he loved you and what we're doing, and we're finding our rhythms and our patterns and our boundaries together as we kind of learn how to do this together in front of an audience. Which is a hard thing to do. But he loved radio and felt like he had so much to give to the industry and to the people in it. And I couldn't tell you the number of people that have reached out to me this morning. My phone's been just bananas all morning. And one of the, social media is such a, I don't know, it's a cancer on our society sometimes, it feels like. But the fact that I've heard from lifelong friends and associates in this business and outside this business, who Bob was able to touch their lives and become a part of their experience and their memories and their families growing up, and how much he gave of himself. I haven't spoken to his wife Lisa this morning, but we've been texting back and forth, and I thanked Lisa for sharing her husband with me, and with the city. Because when Bob was given his diagnosis, he realized that he had spent so much time doing his career, dedicating his love of broadcasting with the city, that he had really kind of shortchanged his own family and his sons. And he spent the last 3 years fighting for every minute so he could spend time with his boys and with Lisa and with his grandkids getting, this guy was fighting cancer for 3 years. He was out hiking 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We had a recording session last weekend making he said, this could be when they gave him that there's no more we can do diagnosis from his care team. He's like, let's make a couple songs. Let's make a couple tunes. Let's make some songs.
Really?
Yeah.
In his final few weeks.
Yeah, and he's like, no, Spike, you're not just going to dance on Trump's head. We're going to make it for everybody.
Doing what he loves.
It's going to be clever.
Yeah.
I'd write a joke. He'd like, write a better joke. What's the next joke? Anybody can write that joke. What's the next one? Yeah, that's how he
so great,
took it to
because
another level.
It's about the
man.
process and the people that he's with. It's like the end product, literally, for him, does not matter at that point. He's doing what he loves with the people he loves doing it with.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know he wants it to be good, but he's not going to sit there. He's not going to have he knows he's not going to have the opportunity to see the payoff of the thing.
Right.
It's the process of doing it with the people that he loves. And I think that's really cool that he reached out to you and everybody.
He and Joe and I wrote together on the phone, the three of us on a phone conversation, having a fight about whose line was funnier, which is always the way it worked. Argue for your joke. Come up.
Did you just feel like old times?
It was exactly like 35 years ago.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And the recording session he put together back in Vermont was the musicians that he recorded his very first song parodies with, made his first album with, Dennis Amiro and the crews from back. These guys are lifelong studio musicians and dear friends of Bob's from the moment he became a professional. And they were the guys with him, giving him one last trip around the merry-go-round.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you, man.
Could we share? I mean, I know we're short on time here, but could we share maybe throughout the day? You have told me a million stories. It's so funny because you'll just.
I was making public because of Bob Rivers.
You'll just tell me these crazy things.
I may or may not have burned a doobie with Joe Walsh.
Yes.
At Parker's on Aurora Avenue. It may not have happened, but that was because of Bob Rivers. Yeah.
You could do a whole segment called "Because of Bob Rivers" and just tell the
I
crazy
sang
stuff
back
you've
up on
gotten
stage
into.
with Sammy Hagar because of Bob Rivers, with Roger Daltrey because of Bob Rivers, with
of that.
Alan White, if you ask.
All
because of
going
Bob
back
Rivers.
to a kid. He said, "Hey, you got talent at this.
Yeah, you should.
You
come
want to
do
be an
this.
intern, and then I'm going to
Yeah.
give you a full-time job, take
Yeah.
you across the country, and change your life."
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I didn't
My
ever.
best friend.
I had a chance to meet Bob a few times. I didn't know him a lot, but I had a chance to meet him a few times. I know that Dory always spoke so highly of him, and they were friends.
Dear friends.
Dear friends.
Yep.
And so he would come on occasionally when I was producing for Dory.
Yeah.
He would come on and just
Dory's the reason we became a talk show instead of a rock and morning show. Instead of playing 8 songs an hour, Dory's the one that told Bob, "You should do this. You've got so much more to say." And when you play for a music station, you're only as good as the songs you're playing. You're only as popular as the latest record from pop music or the classic rock catalog your PD puts together.
so he's like, "Hey,
Dory said, if you
give them something they like."
if you become a talk show, you will own your audience, not the music.
So smart.
And you will be valuable to your station, not the playlist.
And obviously he knew you guys had talent because he'd heard.
It took a while. It took us 2 years to go from 8 songs to no songs. We very gradually stretched our legs in conversation.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, it was
Well,
wonderful. The greatest days of my
you
life.
shared, I hope it's okay to share this, but he passed away in Vermont.
Passed
He
away in
was with his
Vermont with
wife
friends and family
and
and,
his
loved
kids.
ones. Yeah, they all spent what time he had fought for and earned. He spent doing what he loved with the people that he loved.
That's a
the
tremendous
most.
blessing to be able to say
It
goodbye
really
like
is,
that.
man. It really is. It's an absolute
Unbelievable.
gift.
All right, well, that's very sad news, but thank you so much for sharing that with us,
Of
Mike.
course, of course.
Appreciate that. Well, we should do.
And thanks for letting me. A lot of people said I should just take a day, which is so gracious. But there's no I'd rather be than here with you guys, doing what Bob taught me how to do.
That's nice.